So in this video, we're going to review some ideas from when we studied linear relationships. So we have a graph here. It says Jada makes a graph to show the weight of a jar when it contains different numbers of marbles. And the first question we're asked is to find the slope of the line. And to find the slope of the line, you do need to look at two coordinate pairs or 2 points on the line, and 2 have been marked for you. And then when we find slope, we calculate the change in y divided by the change in x. And one way to do that is to find the difference, or to subtract the y coordinates and subtract the x coordinates. So I can do 100 minus 40 to get the change in y, and then I would do 30 minus 10 to get the corresponding change in x. 100 minus 40 is 60, 30 minus 10 is 20. And to get our slope, we would do 60 divided by 20, and 60 divided by 20 is 3. So 3 is our slope. And if you recall, we used the lowercase letter m for slope. So next, we are going to find the y-intercept of our line. And the y-intercept, recall, is the place where the line crosses the y-axis. So we'll start by just coming up with an estimate, and we can see that the y-intercept is right here, and it's somewhere between 0 and 20. It looks like maybe at about halfway or maybe a little more. So I'm going to estimate maybe about 12 or so, and this is just an estimate. I don't actually know. So we'll say about 12. Now we're going to find the exact y-intercept. And to do that, we're first going to write our equation, y equals mx plus b. And we're going to substitute in what we know the slope to be, which is 3. So y equals 3x plus b. Now we want to find b, right? We want to solve for the y-intercept. So to do that, we are going to substitute in values for x and y. And we can use either of the coordinate pairs that we use to find the slope. It doesn't matter which one. I'm going to use 10, 40 just because the numbers are a little smaller. So I'm going to replace y with 40. I'm going to keep my slope of 3, and I'm going to replace x with 10. And then we have an equation that's easy to solve. First, we'll make it simpler. 40 equals 30 plus b. To solve this equation, we'll subtract 30 from each side. And we know 40 minus 30 is 10, so b equals 10. So our y-intercept is 10. So a little different than my estimate from earlier. Once you have the slope and the y-intercept, it's super easy to write the equation. Remember, when we write linear equations, we write them typically in the form y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. So we'll write our equation, y equals 3x plus 10. Let's review what the meaning of the slope is in the context of this problem. So the slope, 3, that's really telling us how much the y variable changes every time the x variable increases by 1. So in this context, this 3 is telling us how much the weight in grams increases when the number of marbles goes up by 1. So we could write it this way, that the weight increases by 3 when the number of marbles increases by 1, or we even could express our slope more in terms of a rate. So it's 3 grams per marble. Again, in other words, for every additional marble, the weight increases by 3 grams. Let's also look at the real-world meaning of the y-intercept. The y-intercept is 10, and really it's this coordinate pair right here, which is 0, 10. And the 0 is the x-coordinate, so that's the number of marbles, and 10 is the y-coordinate, that's the weight in grams. So the real-world meaning of the y-intercept is that when we have 0 marbles, the weight is 10 grams, And we're told in the original problem that Jada is looking at the weight of a jar of marbles. So really, if we're looking at 0 marbles, the weight being 10 grams, that's really the weight of the jar. So a better way to actually express our answer would be to say that the jar weighs 10 grams. And finally, one of the main reasons we write an equation to model a situation is so we can use it to make predictions. So we have an equation that relates x and y equals 3x plus 10. Now we can easily answer this question. If the jar with marbles weighs 200 grams, how many marbles are in the jar? Well, we're being given a weight of 200 grams, and we can see from the graph that weight is the y variable. So we actually are being told a value for y. So the weight being 200 grams is really telling us the fact that y equals 100. So now I can take my equation, replace y with 200. I might have misspoke before. I might have said 100. I meant 200. Replace y with 200, rewrite the rest of the equation, and now we just do some quick solving. Subtract 10. We get 190 equals 3x. We divide both sides by 3. And using a calculator, we get that x is approximately equal to 63.3. So really approximately 63. So we would say if the jar weighs 200 grams, it must contain approximately 63 marbles.